She had exactly 3 seconds to decide. 3 seconds between staying silent and watching a man die. 3 seconds between protecting her child or destroying her own life. Keisha Monroe was used to being invisible, a black waitress in a room full of power, money, and men who never looked twice at people like her. She had learned that silence kept her safe, that speaking up came with a price black women always paid first. But that night, her hands were shaking, her heart was screaming, and the truth was burning in front of her eyes. Someone had just poisoned a glass of wine, and no one else noticed, no one cared. In that moment, Keisha knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If she acted, everything she loved could be taken from her. If she didn't, she would never forgive herself. She chose to act. And if you stay until the end, you'll see how one accident exposed a truth so dangerous it nearly cost her everything. Keisha Monroe learned early that the safest way to survive was to stay invisible. Not quiet, not weak, invisible. At 27, she had mastered the art. Keep your eyes down. Smile just enough. Move fast. Don't give anyone a reason to look at you longer than necessary, especially not in places like the Sterling Room, where wealth sat under crystal chandeliers and power spoke in lowered voices. Especially not when you were a black woman wearing a black apron, carrying other people's plates. That night in Atlanta, rain streaked the windows like tears the city didn't want to explain. Keisha had already been on her feet for 7 hours. Her lower back burned, her shoes pinched. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. A reminder from the school app that tuition for Ava's after-school program was due by Friday. She silenced it without checking. She already knew the number would hurt. Ava was 6, bright, curious, the kind of child who asked why the moon followed the car and whether nurses were allowed to be superheroes. Everything Keisha did was for her. The double shifts, the swallowed comments, the way she let people talk past her like she wasn't there. At the Sterling Room, invisibility was expected, especially from staff like her, especially from staff who looked like her. "Private dining tonight," Tom Reynolds, the floor manager, said without meeting her eyes. "Important guests. No mistakes." He said it the same way he always did when the guests were powerful and white. No mistakes, as if mistakes came easier to some people than others. Keisha nodded. "Yes, sir." She passed a mirrored wall and caught her reflection. Dark skin, tight bun, no makeup beyond lip balm. She looked confident. She looked tired. She looked like someone most people never bothered to learn the name of. The private room smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Deep red walls, a single chandelier. A table set for 5. At the head sat Ethan Holloway. Even before she knew who he was, she felt him. The room bent slightly toward him, as if gravity worked differently for people with that kind of money. Early 30s, clean suit, calm face. The confidence of someone who had never been asked to prove his worth twice. The other men filtered in with laughter and firm handshakes. One arrived last, Marcus Reed. He smiled too easily. His eyes didn't smile at all. Keisha poured water, then wine. She moved clockwise, smooth and practiced. She heard pieces of conversation float over her head like smoke. Mergers, votes, assets, numbers big enough to make her dizzy. The kind of talk that decided who ate well and who didn't without ever mentioning either. She felt it before she saw it, that tightening in her chest, that old instinct sharpened by years of reading rooms for danger. Years of knowing when a smile was a warning. Marcus leaned forward, reaching across the table as if for the salt. His other hand gestured toward a folder, pulling attention away. In his palm, barely visible, was something small, clear, a vial. Time slowed. Keisha watched his fingers tilt, watched something disappear into Ethan Holloway's glass of red wine. Watched Marcus straighten, resume the conversation, laugh at a joke he hadn't told. No one else noticed. Of course they didn't. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her first thought wasn't heroism, it was Ava. Ava's backpack by the door. Ava's missing front tooth. Ava's voice asking if mommy would be home in time to read tonight. "Walk away," her brain said. "Do your job. This is not your world." Ethan's hand moved toward the glass. Keisha's body decided before her fear could stop it. She stepped forward and let her elbow catch his water glass. Ice and water spilled down his suit. The room froze. "Oh my God," Keisha said, her voice sharp with real shock. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see—" A laugh broke the silence. One of the men waved it off. "Relax, it's just water." But Ethan Holloway didn't laugh. He stood. Water dripped from his jacket onto the carpet. He looked at Keisha, not with anger, with focus, with something like calculation. "It's fine," he said, quiet, controlled. "Accidents happen." Keisha's pulse roared in her ears. "I'll get towels, fresh glass, fresh wine." In the kitchen, her hands shook as she grabbed linen. Tom appeared at her shoulder, his face tight. "Keisha," he hissed, "do you know who that was?" "Yes," she said evenly. "And it was an accident." She returned to the room, head high, heart racing. She reached for the wine glass. Ethan's hand closed around her wrist. Not hard, not gentle. Final. "Leave it," he said, their eyes locked. For a fraction of a second, she wondered if he knew, if he had seen it too. She nodded and stepped back. The glass stayed where it was. Dinner continued, but the rhythm was gone. Marcus grew quiet. His knee bounced under the table. When he stood to excuse himself, his face was pale. Minutes later, there was a stir. Marcus reappeared, supported by two servers, sweat on his forehead. "I'm fine," he insisted. "Just not feeling well." Ethan watched him with an expression Keisha couldn't read. Soon the dinner ended. The tip left behind was obscene. Enough to pay a month's rent, enough to make her stomach twist. As the others left, Ethan stayed. Keisha cleared plates, her back to him. She felt his presence before she heard him. "That was quite the spill," he said. "Yes, sir." "Interesting timing," she paused. "Sometimes accidents happen at the right moment." A corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile. Not quite. He placed a stack of bills on the table. "For the inconvenience." "I can't accept that," she said automatically. "You can," he replied. "And you will." He turned to go, then stopped. "Be careful, Keisha Monroe." Her breath caught. He hadn't asked her name. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the city felt sharper. Every shadow too dark, every sound too close. She rode the train home with her shoulders tight, keys threaded through her fingers the way her mother had taught her. At Eastwood Apartments, she checked the locks twice. Ava slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, breathing softly. Keisha stood there longer than usual, watching her chest rise and fall. "This is why," she whispered. The phone rang 3 days later, an unknown number. "Ms. Monroe," a man said smoothly, "this is Calvin Ross, calling on behalf of Mr. Holloway. He'd like to speak with you about what happened at the Sterling Room." Keisha closed her eyes. Invisibility, she realized, was no longer an option. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth she had always known. People didn't expect black women to act. They expected them to endure. She had done something else entirely. Now let me ask you something before the story continues. Do you believe Keisha should have stayed silent to protect her daughter, even if it meant letting a man die? Yes or no? Stay with the story. What happens next will test everything she thought invisibility could protect. Keisha Monroe stopped sleeping through the night. At first, she blamed the extra shifts, then the coffee, then the constant low hum of worry that had lived in her chest for years. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something had shifted the moment she spilled that glass. The world had noticed her. And for a black woman who had survived by being unseen, that attention felt less like opportunity and more like danger. It started small. A black sedan idling across the street from Eastwood Apartments when she left for her morning shift. Still there when she came back 2 hours later. A man on the subway platform who looked at her too long, then pretended to check his phone every time she glanced up. A voicemail with no voice, just breathing, before the line went dead. Keisha told herself she was imagining it. Years of navigating spaces that never felt safe had trained her mind to look for threats. But instinct had saved her once already. She wasn't about to ignore it now. Ava noticed first. "Mommy," she said one evening as Keisha stirred pasta on the stove, "why do you keep looking at the door?" Keisha forced a smile. "Just tired, baby." Ava tilted her head. "You look scared." The word hit harder than any insult ever had. "I'm okay," Keisha said softly, kneeling to meet her daughter's eyes. "I promise." It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The call came 3 nights later. Ms. Monroe, a gruff voice said. Detective Harris, Atlanta Police. We need to ask you a few questions about a man who died after dining at the Sterling Room. Keisha's knees nearly buckled. Died? She whispered. Yes, Marcus Reed. The room tilted. I don't understand. I didn't. Come down to the precinct tomorrow morning. Midtown, 10 a.m. The line went dead. Keisha sat frozen on the edge of her bed, Ava sleeping behind the thin wall. Her mind raced. Dead meant investigation. Investigation meant blame. And blame, she knew too well, always traveled downhill, especially when it came to women who looked like her. She remembered her mother's words. They will always look at you first, not because you did something wrong, because it's easier. Her hands shook as she pulled the card Ethan Holloway had slipped into her apron pocket the night of the dinner. She hadn't used it, had told herself she wouldn't, that she didn't want anything tying her to that world. She dialed. He answered on the first ring. Keisha. Just her name. Calm. Steady. They said Marcus Reed is dead, she said, the words tumbling out. Police. Or someone claiming to be. They want me to come in. A pause. Long enough to make her chest tighten. That wasn't the police, Ethan said. APD doesn't call witnesses at night. They show up. Her breath caught. Then who was it? Someone trying to scare you, he replied. Fishing to see what you know. So Marcus isn't dead? No, he's alive. In Montreal, under a different name. My people confirmed it this afternoon. Keisha closed her eyes, relief and fear crashing together. Then why do this? Because they're panicking, Ethan said, and panic makes people reckless. She swallowed. They tried my door last night. Silence. Then his voice hardened. When? After midnight, someone tested the handle. I'm sending security, he said immediately. Tonight. I don't want bodyguards, she snapped, fear turning into anger. I don't want any of this. I didn't ask for it. I know, he said quietly, but you didn't ask to be put in danger either. There was a knock at her door 2 hours later. Firm. Professional. Keisha's heart slammed as she peered through the peephole. 2 men. Suits. Calm faces. One held up identification. Protective Services, he said. Mr. Holloway sent us. She didn't open the door until she called Ethan again and heard him confirm it himself. That night, Keisha slept on the couch with Ava tucked against her side, every sound pulling her awake. At 3 a.m, headlights swept across the living room wall. The men outside stiffened. Someone ran. The next morning, Ethan didn't give her a choice. Pack a bag, he said over the phone. Enough for a few days. I can't just disappear, Keisha argued. I have work. Ava has school. You have people watching your home, he replied. This isn't about convenience anymore. It's about survival. The word tasted bitter. Survival. She had been doing that her entire life. By sunrise, they were in the back seat of a dark SUV, Atlanta fading behind them. Ava pressed her face to the window, excited and confused. Are we on vacation, she asked. Keisha kissed her hair. Something like that. They arrived at Lakeview Safe House, a quiet place tucked among trees. White walls, wide windows. Silence so deep it made Keisha uneasy. Ethan stood on the porch when they pulled in. No suit this time, just a jacket, coffee in hand. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who hadn't slept. You're safe here, he said. Keisha studied him. People always say that. Inside, over coffee she barely touched, he laid it out. The poison, the lab results, the internal battle inside his company, the people who wanted him gone because he was trying to clean up a legacy built on exploitation. They don't see you as a hero, he said. They see you as a liability. Her jaw tightened. Because I'm black? He didn't dodge it. Because you're black, and because you're a woman, and because you weren't supposed to notice. The honesty startled her more than denial ever could. For years, Keisha said slowly, I've watched things I wasn't supposed to see. People treat me like furniture, like I don't exist. That night, they didn't think I mattered. And that's why you were the only one who could stop it, Ethan replied. That afternoon, Ava wandered the house while Keisha sat alone, staring out at the water. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tom Reynolds. Heard some things? Management says you're suspended pending investigation. Probably for the best. No concern, no question, just assumption. Her throat burned. All her life, one mistake, real or imagined, had been enough to confirm what people already believed about her. That night, as Ava slept in a room bigger than their entire apartment, Keisha sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the tears come. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the quiet release of a woman who was exhausted from carrying fear alone. She wasn't crying because she had helped a billionaire. She was crying because for once, she hadn't stayed silent, and the world had answered with teeth. Outside, security lights flickered on. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching, waiting. And Keisha understood something with painful clarity. Saving a life had been the easy part. Surviving the truth would cost much more. Keisha Monroe had never believed in fair endings. Life had taught her otherwise. Fair was a word people with options used. People who had never had to choose between rent and groceries. People who had never learned how to lower their voice so they wouldn't sound angry, or smile just enough so they wouldn't look threatening. But standing in the quiet kitchen of the Lakeview safe house, watching the early morning light spread across the floor, Keisha felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not relief, possibility. The truth came out slowly, the way real justice always did. Not with sirens or dramatic arrests, but with documents, recordings, bank transfers that didn't lie. Ethan Holloway's legal team worked in silence, following money trails Marcus Reed and his allies thought were buried forever. Emails surfaced, meetings were exposed, a pattern of corruption so deep it had thrived for years because no one had been brave enough to touch it. By the time the story reached the press, it wasn't about a poisoned glass of wine anymore. It was about power. It was about who was protected and who was disposable. And somehow, impossibly, it was about a black waitress who had refused to look away. Keisha didn't see the headlines at first. Ethan insisted she stay offline. Focus on Ava. Focus on breathing. Focus on remembering what safety felt like. But one afternoon, while Ava colored at the table, Keisha caught a glimpse of the TV as a news segment played. Urana sources confirm that the whistleblower who prevented the attempted murder has been placed under protection. Whistleblower. She almost laughed. For most of her life, she had been treated like noise, like background, like someone whose voice didn't carry weight. And now the world was finally forced to hear it. The threats stopped first. No more strange calls. No more cars idling outside windows. No more footsteps in the hallway at night. The men who had tried to scare her retreated into silence, their power dissolving as quickly as it had once terrified her. A week later, Ethan sat across from her at the dining table. "It's over," he said. "They're done." Keisha studied his face. He looked lighter, not victorious, just tired in a different way. "And us?" she asked. "You can go home," he replied, "or anywhere you want. No one's watching you anymore." Home. The word landed softly this time. When Keisha and Ava returned to Eastwood Apartments, it felt smaller than she remembered, but it also felt honest. This was where she had fought for every inch of their life, where Ava had learned to ride her bike in the cracked parking lot, where Keisha had come home exhausted and still found the strength to show up again the next day. 2 days later, she received a letter from the Sterling Room. Her suspension had been lifted. She folded the paper carefully and set it aside. Then she did something she had never done before. She said no. Instead, she accepted the offer from a local hospital to enter a nursing program designed for working parents. Tuition covered, flexible hours, support systems built in. Ethan had offered to pay outright. She had refused. "This has to be mine," she told him, "or it won't mean anything." He respected that. Months passed, then years. Keisha studied while Ava slept, memorized medical terms on bus rides, failed a test and cried in the bathroom, then wiped her face and kept going. There were days she doubted herself. Days the old voice whispered that she didn't belong there, that she was taking up space meant for someone else. But then she would remember that glass, that moment, that choice, and she would keep going. The day Keisha graduated, Ava sat in the front row, feet dangling, clapping louder than anyone else. "That's my mom!" she shouted when Keisha crossed the stage. Keisha laughed through tears. In the crowd near the back, Ethan stood quietly. No cameras, no announcement. Just a man watching a woman become who she had always been capable of being. Keisha took a job at Peachtree Children's Hospital, working with kids who were scared, hurting, and brave in ways adults often forgot. She understood them. She knew what it meant to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to survive anyway. One afternoon, a little boy with tight curls and wary eyes asked her, "Do doctors listen to you?" She smiled gently. "Sometimes they forget to, but I make sure they do." Years later, when Ava was 9, she asked a question that made Keisha pause. "Mom," she said, "are you brave?" Keisha thought about the nights she had been afraid, the times she had wanted to stay silent, the moments she had almost chosen safety over truth. "I'm learning," she answered honestly. Ava nodded, satisfied. "I want to be brave like you." Keisha hugged her close. That night, standing at the window of their new apartment, safer and brighter than the last, Keisha reflected on how much had changed. She hadn't become powerful because a billionaire noticed her. She had become powerful the moment she chose to act. The rest had simply caught up, and somewhere out there, people were still watching, still listening, still learning that the people society trained itself to ignore were often the ones holding everything together. Keisha Monroe was no longer invisible. She was seen, she was heard, and she was free. Before you go, let me ask you something. How did this story make you feel? Did it change the way you think about courage and silence? Do you believe Keisha's choice proves that real power doesn't come from money, but from moral courage? If you enjoyed this story and felt its message, comment number 111 below to let us know. And tell us, which country are you watching from? If this story moved you, please share this video so more people can hear voices like Keisha's. Some stories deserve to be seen.